What's the difference between duplicated and unduplicated people served in a grant application, or more generally in your program metrics? I'm Benjamin Dean from grantgetting.com. This is the topic we're jumping into today. I hope you enjoy it. It's important and it will continue to be more important. This video and others are aimed at helping you get more grants. Be sure to check out the link in the description for a free download on this topic. So why is this important? Well, it is a topic among funders. This is a microcosm of a larger topic. The larger topic among funders is how do we compare like organizations that somewhat superficially are doing similar work, doing the same work, serving the same population with a similar service. Okay, like organizations. How do we compare them such that we can see that one is more worthy or less worthy of an investment? Okay, well, one of the ways is people served. Okay, this is attributable for any number of data points. So if you're watching this and you don't even serve people, that's okay. You can insert pets, you can insert geographic areas, you can have any number of economic outcomes where these sorts of things are important to break down and get clear within yourself. I can tell you in terms of a trend, the trend now is for funders to be more sophisticated and be able to dig in a bit deeper on some of the BS that is being provided to them by community-based organizations. So on this topic, I've chosen this one because it's probably the most complicated. Human services or basic needs services, focused on people, this is one of the primary outputs that you're going to have. This is a counting number, right? So this is not an outcome in most programs. This is an output. This is what you are doing. You have a situation, you have inputs that you're putting into that situation that form your activities. Your activities are going to result in outputs. A primary output for a basic needs organization is the number of people that they serve. Duplicated people served refers to counting the same person each time they access your program or service. For example, if someone attends a weekly class, they are counted every week that they participate. This gives you a sense of total program engagement, but it does not give you a sense of the unique number of people that have been impacted. Unduplicated people served, in this way of speaking, counts each individual only one time, no matter how many times they engage with your program. This is a truer reflection of the reach of the project. Okay? How many unique people have benefited in some way because of your services? Understanding this distinction is essential to accurately representing your program and your program's input, but to also better articulate the differentiating factors for your program as compared to another. So engagement and reach, right? These are like almost these are advertising words, right? These are words having to do with just like superficiality. It doesn't tell you how, it just tells you if and how many, right? So they are a baseline upon which many grant applications are built. We served 6,000 people last year. What does that mean? Was this 60 people that came, 100 times each? Or was this 6,000 people that came one time? One might be better than the other, depending on how you articulate it and how well the grantor cares relative to their goals of giving out money. What is the purpose of that particular grant program? Okay, so it is most commonly done in human services nonprofits where they will be intentionally or unintentionally vague, and they will report a duplicated number in a place where one might think they're talking about an unduplicated number. And this is done, typically speaking, to make a program seem bigger than it is, to make it seem more impactful than it is. If you have a good program, you don't need to fib. You don't need to manipulate the numbers. Okay, so writing good grants is about choosing the right data and presenting it in the correct way, but it is not about manipulation. And there are grant writers that attempt very, very directly and intentionally to manipulate the data points to make an organization seem more impactful in one way or another. And this is just the most common example that I've seen in doing that. The choice between reporting duplicated or unduplicated depends on what you want to demonstrate. If you want to show that your engagement of your program is high, how frequently people are using your services, duplicated counts are useful. Okay, so for example, if you are a food assistance provider, you might report duplicated counts to show how often people return for assistance. Same if you're in the health space. How often do people return? On the other hand, if you're focusing on your reach, right? If you're writing a grant application that cares a lot about the ability to reach underserved markets or underserved people, then you might want to demonstrate that you are serving a very high percentage of the population, the unique population of your particular community. And in that case, unduplicated counts are more appropriate. Okay, so it's not like one is better than the other. Okay, generally speaking, most people assume the more people you touch in terms of a duplicated number, the better your application is going to look. And that's, probably pretty fair to say, generally speaking. But we're getting to the point now where grantors are going to dig deeper. And if they dig deeper and they understand that you've presented a duplicated number and implied it to be an unduplicated number in any way, that's a huge red flag, right? You might get scored slightly less on that application, but guess what? They're not going to forget that. You misrepresented in some minor way, maybe, your program to them. You're not going to be top of mind. They're not going to think of you for other opportunities. They're not going to present you to a philanthropist who says, give me your top 5 most impactful organizations. They're not going to pick you because you haven't presented yourself with full integrity. And that is a really important point on this topic, that it's not just about what you can get away with. Okay, because you can get away with a lot. There is still, with this trend of more accountability, there is still almost no accountability in basic needs providers. So there are opportunities to do that. But guess what? People know when you're misrepresenting things. They know it on an intuitive level, even if they can't point it out. All right, people are smarter than you think, and you will not be presented with additional opportunities, and you will not be well thought of if you start down this path. Okay, so what you want to do, what the alternate path to do, is in the scenarios in your organization where there is ambiguity having to do with the data. So as to say, if you're a, let's say, a pet shelter, and you've got your 5 or 6 main data points: number of pets brought in, number of pets brought in, that have been provided to new homes, number of volunteers engaged in the community, these sorts of things, number of pounds of dog food provided. You have like your output metrics and things that are, important. Then you're going to say, okay, what are the outcomes? The number of people that received a pet within the last year that reported a 95% satisfaction rate. That's one. The number of pets that remain in the homes of the individuals that they were placed 3 years later, and what percentage that is. That's a number. All these different things. What you want to do in preparation or to enhance your grant writing skills is you want to look at all of those stats. Then you want to go look at your competitors or your collaborators, the others that are similar to you in your space. And you want to see how they're reporting it. Most of the time, it's going to be on their website. It's going to be in their annual report. It may be articulated. If they have a good 990, there may be some of that articulated there. And you want to start to pull some of those data points and compare them to yours. And get a sample size. Get 4 or 5 other organizations. They can be in your area or they can be outside of your area. It doesn't matter. And you want to see what are the glaring differences in proportions in some of these metrics. If there are glaring differences in proportions, so as to say your particular pet shelter brought in 100 pets and your cost to do that was $50,000. You see another organization that brought in 1,000 pets and their cost was $30,000. Then you can say, well, I'm collecting information in a certain way. They're collecting information in a certain way, and it might be different. We might be counting different things, right? That organization might say, you know what, we actually also have a dog walking program. So we have our volunteers go to homes and walk dogs, and every one of those dogs that we walk, we count as one of the dogs that we served. Whereas in your numbers, you're counting a dog that comes in and stays at least 3 nights in your shelter, right? That gets counted as a dog served. So, right, you have these different definitions of what is potentially presented as the same metric. All right, so if you do that analysis and you just sort of look for things, you can make phone calls, figure out your top 5 or 6 metrics and ask another shelter how they measure these particular outputs or outcomes. Okay, that's going to give you more information to be able to then, when you write a grant application, define what you mean. And in some cases, you can even articulate what you don't mean. If you present a very important statistic that you have found differentiates your organization from others and is important for this funder to understand, and you see that other organizations are reporting it in a more liberal or more general way, you can say, here's this metric, here's what it doesn't mean, and here's what it means. And usually, if it's an important metric, it's worth your character count space to do that. Okay, and that's how you report it effectively. Back to unduplicated versus duplicated. In most cases, funders are going to want to know both, whether they ask for it or not. It's important to present these numbers in a clear and organized way. For example, in your application, you can say, our program served 500 unduplicated individuals with 1,200 total service interactions in this time period. This shows both your reach and your level of engagement. It tells the funder, it implies to the funder, I know this is hard to review these applications. Let me make this easy for you and give you both of these numbers clearly identified. By using both, you give the funder a comprehensive view of your program's impact, and you help their grant review process. Okay? In the description below, there's a free guide. Download it. It's free. It gives additional tips on this particular topic. Down in the comments, if you have a question about duplicated versus unduplicated, or people served and sort of how to split this data in your grant applications, pop your question in there and I would love to help you sort it out. Thank you for jumping in, and we'll see you in the next video.